So there was a little disagreement early on about how much we should work and how hard we should work.
Don Felder played the evocative chords that helped define an era for decades, but a tempest was brewing beneath those golden strings. Something far less harmonic was cooking behind the scenes as the audience lapped up the harmonies and songs. Felder is now prepared to speak, truly speak, after years of enigmatic interviews and extended periods of quiet. Not only does he spill the beans on guitars and fame, but also on power, quiet, and the aftermath of a dream gone bad. Untold until now, one story changes the entire plot. Wondering how wide the fissures were? It's about to be revealed to you. A new oral dimension was introduced when Don Felder joined the Eagles in 1974, taking the band from country rock darlings to rock superstars. His addition to the lineup was more than just another guitarist. Before Felder joined the band, the Eagles' sound was based on the laid-back California style and harmonies of songs like Peaceful Easy Feeling and Tequila Sunrise. However, Felder added an edgier, more electrified tone that broadened the group's sound palette. He had his start playing in southern rock bands and had a technical grasp of hard rock guitar. His strong playing on songs like Already Gone from the album On the Border marked a change in the band's musical direction and was his first contribution. Before long, Felder was more than a supporting player. He was an integral part of the creative process. The Eagles' changing sound, which included stronger, more radio-friendly rock, was defined in large measure by his guitar arrangements. Songs like Too Many Hands and the title track of 1975's One of These Nights showcased Felder's impact, blending his complex guitar lines with sumptuous vocal harmonies. Felder's innate musical abilities balanced out Glenn Frey's pop sensibility and Don Henley's lyrical genius, resulting in a sound that was both technically proficient and melodically sophisticated at the band's peak performance. After Felder joined the band, their commercial success skyrocketed, and One of These Nights became their first #1 record. This was by no means an accident. Felder was instrumental in creating the sound that propelled the Eagles to fame, even if he wasn't always given the credit he deserved for writing the songs. Not only did Felder co-write the legendary Hotel California, but he also contributed to other classics like Those Shoes and Victim of Love, two tracks that display his funk rhythms and fiery guitar textures. The band's earlier musical prowess was outshone by the vibrant palette of these songs from Hotel California and The Long Run. Leading extended jams that showcased his technical skill and ability to connect his audience via sheer musicianship, Felder's performance became an equally vital aspect of Eagles' shows. The Eagles' history would have been stronger without Felder, but he still added enough glue. However, a one riff would eventually reverberate more powerfully than any record. The humble beginnings of the now iconic guitar solo in Hotel California can be heard at Don Felder's Malibu home studio. The song is frequently considered to be among the finest in rock history. Unaware that it would form the basis of the Eagles' most legendary hit, Felder recorded a crude demo using a 4-track tape recorder and a 12-string guitar. I would make about 15 or 16 song ideas on cassettes and mail them to Don and Glenn, he remembered in a 2023 Yahoo Entertainment interview. Among the concepts was a somber chord sequence accompanied by a multi-layered melody. With the incorporation of that demo into Hotel California, Felder's name is indelibly stamped throughout rock history. When the band chose to keep the arrangement of his first album intact, Felder was honestly taken aback. He was taken aback by the fact that they preserved the identical structure of his demo, virtually unchanged from how he had recorded it. This very faithful recreation of a demo, particularly in a large-scale studio recording, is indicative of how powerful and precise Felder's musical vision is. Lyrically, Don Henley and Glenn Frey constructed a fantastical criticism of American luxury over the music. It was Felder's melody that captivated listeners and gave the song its eerie, cinematic vibe, even though the words were fascinating. A lot of people think that Joe Walsh and Felder just made up the iconic solo at the end as they were playing it. His statement was completely false, he insisted. It was a well-planned process from start to finish. What ensued was a two-guitar duet that not only defined Hotel California, but also changed people's expectations for what an emotionally charged and technically proficient rock guitar solo should sound like. Lead guitar solos started using it. It has been embraced by countless guitarists and is now a legendary rock classic, immortalized in the Rock Hall of Fame. This contrasted solo is still studied and admired by many years after. In his renowned Hotel California solo, Felder remains steadfast. In his solo performances, he faithfully performs it note for note, not to make excuses, but to honor it. The reason people come is to hear stories they remember, he said. By remaining faithful to the original, Felder pays homage to the song and the audience who gave it life, unlike many musicians who alter their masterpieces throughout the years. He has firmly claimed credit for penning the tune, regardless of whatever squabbling has happened inside the Eagles since then. It's not just any song, it's a tribute to his contributions to the Eagles, including profound melodies, impressive technical abilities, and timeless emotional resonance. From a tight-knit group to a worldwide powerhouse, the Eagles' dynamic shifted toward Don Henley and Glenn Frey. This change was observed directly by Don Felder, who had joined the band in 1974 and had a major impact on its rock sound. Henley and Frey were the executive decision-makers in the band's later organization, which Felder likened to a business model in his biography, Heaven and Hell, and in other interviews. Felder noted, "It became obvious that the Eagles had stopped being a band and started being a business," highlighting the growing exclusion of opinions that disagreed with the authoritative style. At the 1994 Hell Freezes Over reunion, intended as a joyous return of the original chemistry, the tide turned. Felder shared the other members' optimism that the band's previous egalitarian structure would be restored. Henley and Frey had instead suggested a new financial structure that caught him off guard. It would have given them 75% of the earnings and divided the other 25% among Felder, Joe Walsh, and Timothy B. Schmidt. Throughout the reunion, Felder's position within the group gradually diminished. From the outside looking in, he was still performing and could boast about co-writing the band's biggest song, but he had no say in any of the important choices that came up. From tour preparation to commercial negotiations, everything was done apart from the group he had previously been a member of. Working under two bosses, as Felder put it, was certainly not like the teamwork of yesteryear. It was common practice to disregard creative proposals and to label as insubordination any action that challenged Henley and Frey's authority. Rather than his abilities or impact, his position was diminished due to office politics. This occurred when the Eagles were reshaping their fate and releasing the ties that had held them together in the past. In response to Felder's efforts to challenge this new order, many interpreted his pleas for justice as a challenge to the authority to exert power. It has nothing to do with ego, he clarified. It was about fairness and keeping the integrity of what we started. The disapproval was depicted as a defiant attitude. The band had effectively stopped functioning as a creative collaboration by the time he was fired in 2001. The Hell Freezes Over tour, which was once celebrated as a triumphant reunion, now symbolized the Eagles' evolution from a loosely knit band to a highly controlled brand headed by only two members. A solitary piece of paper was faxed to Don Felder's office in 2001. ending his time with the Eagles in a way that was both sudden and impersonal. "I received a fax stating, 'You're out,'" he disclosed in an interview with Yahoo Entertainment in 2023. Without prior notice or explanation, the firing came after over 30 years of contributing to the development of the band's sound and reputation. The drastic change in the band's internal ethos was highlighted via a direct message rather than a meeting or phone conversation. The way Felder was let go was not only startling, but also profoundly degrading. The disillusionment Felder felt about the group's supposed unity only served to heighten the anguish of the dismissal. A collaboration based on shared history and successes remained in his mind when he thought of the Eagles, even though tensions were rising. Again, he assumed it was going to be a band. However, they handled it as if it were a company, and I was treated as an employee rather than a partner. This statement highlights the sentimental significance of the choice. The band's history would not have been complete without Felder's involvement, which included co-writing Hotel California and playing guitar on some of the band's most memorable songs. Still, his efforts weren't rewarded with anything more than a transactional dismissal. Following Felder's dismissal, the band decided to go the legal route, which led to a lawsuit claiming wrongful termination, breach of contract, and unfair profit distribution. This case lifted the veil on a less publicized aspect of the inner workings of a legendary rock band. Subsequently, there was a flurry of coverage in the media, a slew of enthusiastic and well-informed fans, and industry watchers who, for many, discovered the power dynamics at work for the very first time. The action was never only about compensation for Felder. "It wasn't about money," he said in his memoir. "It was resolved out of court in 2007, but it permanently stained the Eagles' reputation for honor and the feeling of having my contributions erased." Felder did not only vanish or wallow in self-pity, he was involved in a serious accident shortly thereafter. He started to rediscover who he was as an artist in his own unique way. The symbolism of fire by fax became a contentious issue, serving not to show his departure, but as a harsh warning about the consequences of having too much power, ego, and control. The end of creative partnership. "I would like not to harm anyone. I simply desire for the truth to be known," Felder said in hindsight. The terrible reality, however, was the springboard for Felder's rebirth, as he broke away from institutional loyalty and asserted his independence as an artist and storyteller. The unexpected dismissal guitarist Don Felder from the Eagles in 2001 was the catalyst for one of the most high-profile and illuminating court disputes in rock music's annals. Felder sued Eagles litigated Don Henley and Glenn Frey for wrongful termination, violation of contract, and unfair profit distribution shortly after being fired by fax. The court papers revealed the Eagles' long-hidden internal strife, which had been obscuring their perfect public image. The central tenet of Felder's accusations was an objection to the monetary arrangement that had been established during the band's 1994 reunion, which had concentrated wealth and authority in Henley and Frey's possession. Felder saw the termination as the last straw in a protracted struggle for financial and artistic parity, and not only as revenge. As if trembling weren't enough, the case enthralled the music business. As the court case progressed, the public and media were privy to hitherto unseen details about the inner workings of a globally renowned band. Felder portrayed an antagonistic setting where his significance had been gradually reduced. Under those circumstances, it became impossible to continue, he stated in interviews. Despite having a long history with the band, he described being ignored at corporate meetings and treated like he wasn't valuable. A band fractured by egos, power struggles, and unbridled authority, the Eagles' years-long illusion of togetherness was broken by the court battle. Felder stated many times that he was not personally profiting from the lawsuit. It wasn't a money thing for him, he told Yahoo Entertainment. To develop his legacy and have his musical and artistic contribution to the Eagles acknowledged was the main motivation. But standing up for what is right was also a factor. A second facet of his honesty is that he wanted more than simply songwriting credit for the role he played in guiding the band's trajectory throughout its peak years of popularity. The torturous legal process served as a conduit for the long-suppressed story to finally come out. Felder ultimately settled out of court in 2007 without disclosing the terms, but it was evident that he would not be destroyed. For him, the case marked a turning point in his career, and perhaps even his personal life. It put an end to his exposure to a poisonous environment and gave him the freedom to pursue his career as he saw fit. He went on to say, "No one else would tell the truth if I didn't," highlighting the significance of having a say and taking responsibility. Felder, by initiating legal actions, presented himself as an artist whose career was too formidable for institutional authority to ignore. He also portrayed himself as someone who was reluctant to be disregarded by such power, having previously served as an Eagle. And it, in turn, sparked further conversations about fairness in the music industry, with more people speaking out about legacy and authorship. Felder seized a new weapon, his words, just as things were starting to calm down. The music industry was rocked in 2008 by the publication of Don Felder's revelatory book, Heaven and Hell, My Life in the Eagles, 1974-2001. It wasn't your run-of-the-mill rock biography. Rather, it was an honest and daring look at the rise and fall of one of the most iconic bands of all time. Felder gave a brutally honest account of his tenure with the Eagles, describing how the group went from being a collaborative, creatively active unit to a strictly controlled brand run by Don Henley and Glenn Frey. His blunt opening statement, "The Eagles stopped being a band and started being a business," set the tone for his unfiltered book. Fans had long accepted the protagonist's idealized portrayal, but this story cast doubt on that. There was an immediate reaction. The allegations allegedly infuriated Henley and Frey, and in response, Henley's legal team threatened legal action, accusing Felder of violating confidentiality agreements. Yahoo Entertainment reports that they went so far as to try to halt the distribution of some audiobook chapters. Felder dug in his heels regardless of the legal pressure. "I didn't write it to destroy anybody," he claimed in an interview from 2023. "If I wanted to, it would be a lot heavier." The muted tone was on purpose. Although Felder had the opportunity to reveal much more, he opted to present readers with an honest look at dysfunction without going beyond with sensationalism. His tone, Felder's honest, introspective, and sometimes self-critical voice, was what truly grabbed our attention, while his words were compelling as well. He admitted to experiencing resentment and burnout as a result of his own personal issues inside the band. This openness provided the book its foundation and gave readers the rebellious permission to think about what happened to Felder and how he reacted on it. "The regulations were always shifting, and all I could do was attempt to stay alive," he said. Rather than presenting himself as an ideal victim, Felder succeeded in depicting the complexities of a man torn between duty and conviction. Heaven and Hell became more than just a tell-all because of the author's unfiltered emotional honesty. It became a therapeutic act, a tool for healing, and a road to sobriety for one man. Disagreements arose among the general population. While many saw the memoir as a brave and long-overdue revelation, others saw it as pointless ranting. With its insightful commentary on the Eagles and the shadowy side of band politics and creative control in general, Heaven and Hell became an iconic rock biography over the years. As a way to express himself uniquely, he wanted to correct the record in heaven and hell. "No one would ever know what really happened if I didn't speak up," he claimed. So he started a conversation about honesty, authorship, and the hidden costs of celebrity by heading north in his tale, which led to a return to the South. Don Felder had a decision to make after his widely publicized breakup with the Eagles: fade away from view or make a comeback according to his own terms. The latter was his choice. Felder re-entered the music industry in 2012, releasing Road to Forever, a profoundly introspective solo album that signified his return to the industry as a solo artist rather than a band member, over a decade after being let go. Felder expressed his emotional journey since leaving behind a mirror in the album's themes of betrayal, sorrow, and survival, saying it was very cathartic in an interview with Yahoo Entertainment. The purpose of the songs was not vengeance, but rather healing from pain and finding his voice again via music. Collaborating with esteemed performers such as Steve Lukather and David Paich of Toto, Road to Forever was met with tremendous acclaim. Although Felder's public profile had taken a knock due to the split with the Eagles, his reputation among musicians was evidently untarnished. However, American Rock and Roll, his 2019 follow-up, cemented his position as a solo powerhouse. Showing that Felder was still recognized in the business and capable of mobilizing a cross-generational array of talent, the album featured cameos by rock giants like Slash, Mick Fleetwood, Sammy Hagar, and Chad Smith. By saying, "This is who I am musically without filters," Felder was expressing his autonomy as a musician. Both the presence of his legendary partners and the sincerity and emotional clarity of the subject matter contributed to the profound effect of Felder's solo compositions. After escaping the artistic and political constraints that plagued his time with the Eagles, Felder was able to write freely about a wider range of topics, including aging, self-esteem, love loss, and independence. He not only sang lead, but also played guitar and served as producer and arranger. He reclaimed his former supporting positions in the band's songs in every way. Musically, songs like Wash Away and The Way Things Have to Be didn't care where the words took us. They just spoke about being strong and resolute. By constantly going on concert tours, Felder was able to reconnect with his fan base as well. Live performances provided a more intimate setting than his stadium tours, but the intensity level was still high. Fans weren't just looking for a throwback performance, they wanted to witness an active, creative musician who was putting out new music. Felder stayed on stage, sang Hotel California and other hits, and paid homage to the greats of yesteryear, all while highlighting his current music more prominently. "What was is not important to me. What's next is something I'm making," he declared. After each record and performance, he redefined overcoming public criticism, proving that the past is not more important than the present or future. Don Felder's approach to discussing his history changed as he progressed through his career. Instead of approaching it with the zeal of someone seeking vengeance, he began to speak about it with the clarity of someone who had accepted and moved on from the unfinished business. In interviews conducted in 2024 and 2025, Felder seems to have moved on from recounting every moment of his tenure with the Eagles. Instead, he reflected thoughtfully and emotionally detached. "I don't want my life into a long narrative," he remarked, demonstrating a purposeful choice to move on, not by erasing, but by establishing limits. His journey had been marked by treachery, legal struggles, and the suppression of his artistic voice. But, in his subsequent introspection, he placed more emphasis on comprehending himself than harboring hatred. The most moving revelation came from Felder's recounting of his efforts to make amends with Glenn Frey before to Frey's 2016 death. Despite his best efforts, no one responded. Felder said, "There was a gap between us that will never be filled." He did not do so with resentment or pride, but rather with the sorrowful realization that certain chasms, no matter how much time passes, remain unbridgeable. Beyond what the public saw, his maturity shone through in his choice to attend Frey's memorial and his gracious tone in remarks to the media. Despite his lack of pretense, Felder did recognize their common past and the significance of grace. You have to put in the time and effort to gain that type of insight. It's not something you can buy. Although Felder and Don Henley had a tumultuous relationship, he was forthright in describing it as aloof but not antagonistic. "I still have my reservations about Henley's leadership of the band, but I've moved past that," he said. "Forgiving is not necessarily absolving others for their own sake. It's release for myself from the heaviness of holding on to that anger," he said, putting his feelings about forgiveness into context. The crux of Felder's thought was forgiveness as a weapon of liberation, not a sign of weakness. The idea that it relieved oneself of burdens became central to his work. He didn't try to make amends or erase his mistakes by rewriting history. He focused instead on ensuring his personal well-being and continuing to feel purposeful in life. Felder often brings up these points in public lectures and events, particularly seminars and workshops geared at the creative process. He warned aspiring artists against invisible burnout, the emotional degradation that occurs when one's voice is continually muzzled in ego-driven collaborative venues. His classes were more on mental toughness in stressful environments than music theory. "I refuse to wait for an apology," he said. "I completed the task at hand." The declaration solidified Felder's artistic identity. It was no longer defined by the wars he fought, but by the peace he decided to protect. And if it wasn't in the official record, it was in the music. Don Felder subtly assumed a position that few would have foreseen, that of a mentor, in the years following his stormy departure from the Eagles and the subsequent reconstruction. He became more involved with younger musicians and music communities as his solo career developed, teaching them guitar techniques and imparting the lessons he had learned about the dark side of fame. Felder frequently gave advice based on experience rather than theory at guitar clinics, podcast interviews, and other live events. "I strive to educate not just how to play, but how to survive," he remarked, exposing a more profound purpose that went much beyond the guitar. When employees' creative autonomy is stifled, as it so frequently is in collaborative or corporate-dominated workplaces, Felder's message hits home. He often cautioned about the invisible burnout that comes from having one's ideas routinely ignored or underappreciated. Based on his own experience with the Eagles, Felder elaborated on how being left out of decisions stunted his professional development and even killed his sense of self. He spoke to Yahoo Entertainment on the impact of working under those who consistently disregard their ideas on their self-esteem. His observations had the brunt of someone who had endured artistic repression and come out the other side more resilient, not resentful. Walking away is the single most important thing Felder has learned. But he stressed that some creative situations, no matter how large or magnificent, may become toxic. In a podcast interview, Felder warned that being in a band might become a chore rather than a collaborative effort. Through his own story arcs, he demonstrated, at times at tremendous personal cost, what it meant to go with dignity. Instead, than focusing on making money, he encouraged new musicians to be themselves. The capacity to be true to oneself no matter what happens to you is more important than celebrity when it comes to achieving actual success. Even though he has been through a lot, Felder does not come at teaching with resentment. Unveiling painful setbacks while maintaining a firm faith in the potential for improvement is what truly distinguishes his coaching from the others. "I'm not here to pour people's misery," he declared. "I'm here to assist them in avoiding it." He hardly broached the subjects of vengeance or remorse. Now the space is filled with clarity, resilience, and the restorative qualities of music. Felder has created an enduring legacy by recounting his path, which goes beyond the Eagles, solos, and legal struggles. Felder pulled a surprising stunt, right when everyone thought he had given it his best. A very introspective retrospective that provided more than simply a best hits collection. Don Felder's The Vault, 50 Years of Music, was published in 2025. Unreleased songs covering his decades-long journey, from his days with the Eagles to his solo career, made up the CD, instead than rehashing popular material. Even though Felder's songs were never broadcast, he described them as snapshots of meaningful occasions in his life. During the off-stage years, when attention was waning, The Vault was constructed as a monument to the doggedness of the creative process. The album stood out not just because of the content, but also because of the people that contributed to its creation. Notable rock figures like Steve Lukather, David Paich, and Toto's Joseph Williams also joined Felder, demonstrating the immense regard he continues to get from his peers. All of the tunes, from upbeat rockers to introspective ballads, shared Felder's distinctive guitar technique and honest lyrics. His instincts hadn't aged, they had grown, as the project demonstrated. Some of these tunes were stored away for a long time since he didn't use them while he was with the Eagles. Felder rebuilt those works with complete freedom of expression, rearranging and contrasting earlier themes. It wasn't about changing the course of events. Rather, it was about giving a voice to music that had been neglected for a long time. In addition to being an album, The Vault became a statement on the restoration of artistic freedom. Both listeners and reviewers praised the album for its unique blend of introspection and innovation. "Nostalgia isn't the point here," Felder said. "This is about finishing work that was always meant to be heard." If anything, The Vault was more than just a record honoring his history. It was a daring declaration that his music and narrative were far from over. Much obliged for your time. Like the video, comment with your ideas, and subscribe for more untold stories from music history if you appreciated this deep dive into Don Felder's story and the hidden realities behind the Eagles. The next video that appears on your screen is one that you definitely do not want to miss. We will meet up then.